Ladies, welcome back to the show. We've got a good one for you today. I mean, when don't I have a good one for you? Let's be honest. But today's something that I haven't gotten into on this podcast. And you've been listening to me for the last year and a half, talking about my journey with losing weight in perimenopause and how I did that. And one of the biggest things that I did that impacted my ability to get off some pounds was I started to take my exercise more seriously than I have ever taken it. Thanks to my lovely, gorgeous Pam Sherman, she really helped me get back into working out. And I've talked about this on several podcasts and how instrumental it was to have that accountability with her and really started to just get into the lifestyle of exercising on a regular and taking the lifting weights far more seriously. So of course, because of that, I've been trying to just dive deeper into muscle building. And I think that that's something that's important to do to get excited about it rather than just like, okay, I guess I should go to the gym because I have to, because Karen said on her podcast, this is helpful for us menopausal women. Like it's super important to go, okay, let's really dig into this. How do we build muscle? How much protein do I need to build muscle? How often should I be working out? How often should I be lifting, increasing my weights? Is 20 minutes not enough? Is an hour too long? So, ladies, this is what we're getting into today. We're going to get into the nitty gritty of weightlifting and exercise. And I'm super happy that I found my guest today. Well, he found me actually. And he approached me and he wanted to do some ads on my podcast. And I was like, yes, because his stuff super aligned with mine. I knew that my audience could very easily be his audience as well. So we connected and then he asked me to be on his podcast and I was like, you've got to come on my podcast. So let me introduce you to my new friend, Philip Pape. He's a certified nutrition coach, mindset specialist, strength training expert, and host of the Wits and Weights podcast. Through his personal journey of weight loss and strength, Philip learned about evidence-based nutrition, resistance training, and body composition. He started sharing what he learned through the Wits and Weights podcast and eventually nutrition coaching. Philip's approach emphasizes sustainability, consistency, and mindset. Each person's path is unique, and his mission is to help you balance optimal health with the zest for life without excessive dieting, cardio, or food restrictions. Yay! Philip helps working professionals with busy lives burn fat, get lean, feel energized, and project confidence in their career and relationships as founder and head nutrition coach of Wits and Weights Nutrition and Health Coaching. You can find Phil at witsandweights.com. So welcome, Philip.
Thank you, Karen, so much. I'm really excited to be on the show and have this conversation with you.
Yes. And okay, so what I love, number one about you, Philip, is you're not one of these people that this came naturally to.
Mhm.
You see a lot of that, when you go on YouTube and you're looking for exercise programs or you're online trying to find an exercise program, and majority of it, you're seeing these women and men that are freaking shredded. And they're just
For
like,
sure.
and they're, 1% of the population. It was like they came out of the womb lifting weights shredded because it's just genetically, that's their thing. They can very easily have these physiques. You were not like that.
That's right. I'm trying to get there, but
No
yes, I was
offense
not
to
like that. Yep.
you. So tell us your story of how you got into this.
Yeah, I guess it's more of the average Joe type of story, which I think is relatable to a lot of people. As I was growing up, I was an active kid growing up in South Florida. We played outside a lot, but I was never in sports, and I was never into fitness. And frankly, my diet was never very good. And as I grew up, started to gain weight. went to college and gained the sophomore 30. We know about
Yep.
the freshman 15. For me, it was the sophomore 30. And, I always chalk things up to genetics. Like you said, I wasn't genetically blessed in any way, overweight. Most of my family struggled with weight. We had heart disease, we had diabetes in the family. And I think most people walk around thinking, okay, this is my lot in life. There's really a small envelope that I can actually improve within that. I'm not going to be, like you said, these fitness influencers with a six pack that are totally jacked. And I spent probably 2 decades through my 20s and 30s trying to figure it out, not really succeeding, but learning everything that didn't work, which is valuable. And I cycled through all the diets. I did Atkins back in the day. I went through paleo, my paleo phase, keto, a whole bunch of weird diets that I can't even remember that I did leading up to my wedding, just to, and every
Yes.
time yeah, you know what I'm saying. And every time I did, I would look in the mirror and say, okay, I lost weight, but what is that doing for me? I'm just skinnier, more gaunt, pasty version of myself. I don't feel good. I don't look good. I don't like take my shirt off at the pool. Like, and these are important things for people, in your 20s, just the vanity side of it. We can't
Yep.
underestimate in terms of our body image,
Yeah.
and let alone as we get older into our 30s and realize the other health effects that these things have, things like blood pressure and so on. So I went through these all these phases of what's the next big thing? What's the next quick fix that's going to do it? In parallel, I was not working out very much through my 20s. I tried machines at the gym. I tried cardio. My idea of fitness, like most people, was move as much as you can and eat as little as you can.
Mhm.
Right? That the standard formula. And throughout my 30s, I actually did do CrossFit. And I have to say that CrossFit turned me on to barbells that I had no comfort level whatsoever before then in the gym near dumbbells or barbells whatsoever. So it turned me on to barbells, to Olympic weightlifting, and to kind of working out hard, getting that conditioning and seeing what it feels like to push yourself. So for all of its faults, it did that, but I still felt like I was stalling for years. I still felt like the physique and the body composition wasn't there. If I lost or gained weight, it was primarily due to diet, but I didn't have much muscle. And then when I turned 39, so this was just a few years ago, I vowed to get in the best shape of my life by the time I was 40. I said, I'm going to give myself a year to start to figure it all out. And I talked to my coach. I had a coach at the time at the same gym. He's a strength and conditioning coach. They said, we've got to stop all the boot camp stuff and you got to focus on strength. I'm like, yeah, but doesn't that mean I'm only working out 3 days a week? And, it doesn't look like it's a lot of volume. How could I possibly? Nope. That's what you got to do. That's going to work. Let's go figure it out. So he programmed some basic compound movements for me. We'll get into that, compound
Yeah.
movements with barbells in the gym to get stronger. So I started to do that. Not the high rep, high volume stuff, but low rep, very heavy barbell based training, maximum effort. You know what it feels like to work out hard, and then adding weight over time to get stronger. And we can get into some of those details in a bit. CrossFit wasn't doing that for me because they don't focus on progression over time. That then I realized the next revelation would have been nutrition. So up till now, I realized I could get stronger and that I needed to feed the muscles to get stronger. But I probably went a little bit overboard. I probably gained quite a bit of weight while doing that.
You're like,
Believe it
I'm
or
going to
not.
start
Yeah.
bulking.
That's what it was. Yeah. I
Yeah.
got a bulk. I was drinking whole milk. Okay. I
Oh my
was
gosh.
eating whatever, right? The seafood diet, as they say. And I probably gained 30 pounds in like 6 months. And, if I'm around 180. So that's a decent amount of weight to gain.
Yes.
And but I actually was feeling better. I was feeling stronger. I was lighter on my feet. I was able to play with my kids in a way that didn't tire me. So I knew there were some benefits here, even though I was getting a little bit fluffy. And so this was around 2020. The pandemic lockdowns occurred, and I had time now to kind of focus on learning and studying and reading and listening to podcasts like yours, and listening to the evidence-based experts talk about nutrition, strength training, flexible dieting, protein, the right rep ranges, all of these things. And I just dove in headfirst and learned as much as I could. and finally started to get it and figure out what the things I was missing. Some of the things we can get into today. And come late 2021, I made significant progress. Was in the best shape of my life as I get. I finally had decent body composition, finally had some muscle. And I'm like, I want to tell people about this. I like to talk a lot. So how do I do that? I'm not a huge fan of writing a lot. So forget the blog. Let's go with a podcast. And that's when I started the Wits and Weights podcast in late 2021. And then fortuitously, one of my listeners, who is also a coworker of mine, she was a power lifter and she came on my show. She was one of my earliest interviews. And afterwards, she said, I learned so much in a week of binging your show compared to what I'd learned in years of lifting and
Wow.
nutrition. And I think you'd make a good coach. So that kind of gave me the bug to pursue nutrition coaching, became certified. And now I help people doing that as well and come on to podcasts like yours. And I think that's why I'm here today.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I see so many parallels between you and I. Like my story is so similar, but
Mhm.
it's like the female version of
Sure.
trying, all the different diets and then thinking that CrossFit, it wasn't called CrossFit, it was identical to CrossFit though, thinking that that was the answer. That,
Yeah.
you know what, if I really pushed it and did these like super hardcore CrossFit like workouts, then for sure I'm going to lose the weight. And trying paleo and Atkins and keto and vegan and all of these things and just not coming up with results. And I feel
Hmm.
like I did this dance for, oh my gosh, probably 15 years
Hmm.
before I
Hmm.
finally went, oh, this is not working. This is not what my body needs. And I had to go on a completely different path at that point than you did because that's what my body needed. But
Right.
now come the last few years, I've gotten back into it and been like, okay, how do I do this now for real? Like, and how
Hmm.
do I
Absolutely.
sustain it? So I think, I think you need to share with us what you feel was kind of, you're a mindset specialist. So in this last 2 years, what really shifted in the mind to get you to do this? Like, is in stay with it and, did you just because you started seeing results or just the education or you figured out how to do it right? Like, what really got you to go, this is it, and I'm going to stick with it?
Yeah, that's always a great question because in hindsight, you can find key moments that might have caused the breakthrough. And in reality, in the moment, it was a combination of education, awareness, and hard work. And when I say hard work, I don't mean to turn people off to the idea that, oh, this is going to be a struggle. I actually mean that in the positive way, in that once we start seeing those results from the process and a process works, it literally is a matter of, okay, repeating the process over and over again and then refining it from there. So things like you mentioned cardio. For years, the mode of exercise for me was running, lots of
Mhm.
cardio, biking, running, rowing, and even the conditioning. And I always thought, okay, we need to burn calories. And then I read a book by Henry Ponser. It was, I think it's called Burn. It came out a few years back, which was about a different way to look at metabolism, not in the, okay, the more you move, the more you burn, but our bodies adapt. And there's not a lot you can do about that from an exercise perspective. But if you have more muscle mass, you can burn more calories. And that was just one of those little revelations that
Mhm.
came along where I said, huh. So you're saying two people of the same size and the same weight, the person that has greater fat-free mass simply burns more calories 23 hours a day when they're not exercising. And it's those little revelations over time and starting to open your mind to, oh, I actually need twice as much protein as I've ever eaten before. That sounds crazy. Isn't it going to hurt my kidneys or is it going to cause other problems? Nope, those are myths, but until you look into it, until you understand what the evidence says, you don't know that it works. So it's kind of a long-winded answer,
No, it's
but
great.
yeah, but it really is awareness and education. I try to do that with my clients from day one is why do we do this? Why does it work? What does the evidence say? So that you buy in and you say, okay, well, I can't argue with facts. Now I just need to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I used to
Yeah.
think that if only I could become a runner, then I would be thin. I did a whole
Mhm.
blog post
Mhm.
on it. It was one of my first blog posts because
Okay.
I had that belief for so many years. And I would think, okay, I'm just going to get out there. I'm going to start running every day. It would last like
Mhm.
2 days. And I'd be like, I hate it because
Yeah,
I
for
hate
sure.
running. But I thought that that's how I could be thin. And I think
Right.
women are so stuck still in the headspace of cardio's key,
Mhm.
even though they've been hearing so much more that weightlifting is so important. And I think there's a blockage, Phil.
Mhm.
Do you tell me if you think there's a blockage? Like when you're working with female clients, do you not think that even though they're hearing so much about work lifting weights, they still have this like subconscious belief that lifting heavy is going to make them bulky, that it's not like, how is it that that's going to help them lose weight if they're not sweating and running for an hour on a treadmill?
I do get that, although right from our very first conversation, I think I try to let them know who I am and what I think. And a lot of people that I meet, clients, they come through listening to the podcast, for example,
Right.
and they have that level of trust and knowledge. And fortunately, the knowledge is disseminating more than in the past. Like I think the noise of the fitness industry is starting to get some clarity with these. But having said that, yes, female clients, they love to do their Pilates and yoga and tennis and Peloton and all the other things. And I'm like, okay, we can still do those. We have to dial it back. Let's think about how much we lift versus how much we run and what do we care about? What do we prioritize? And let's do that. I'm not going to cut out something completely if you enjoy it. But like if you said, if you're just running because you think it's the right thing to do, but you hate running, we're not going to run anymore at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. So
Yeah.
ideally, let's start kind of getting into the nitty gritty now,
Sure.
myths and facts. Ideally, how much cardio versus weight training should the average woman that's in her 40s and beyond, because we're
Mhm.
most of my listeners are in that midlife phase,
Mhm.
what do you feel is ideal as far as that balance goes? If somebody's goal is weight loss.
Yes. So if your goal is whatever your goal is, so I want to be clear, whether your goal is weight loss, maintenance, muscle building, you're going to want to train roughly the same amount. And it's going to be, sufficient to build muscle and it's going to be sufficient to retain muscle when you're losing weight. Because we don't just want to lose muscle and fat, we want to lose fat, right? We want to hold on to that muscle. So simple rule of thumb, when you're a beginner, 3 days a week for about 45 minutes to an hour is what it's going to come out to if you're doing some big compound lifts. Compound lifts being the multi-joint movements like squats, deadlifts, bench presses, and so on. And cardio should be about half that. So if we're lifting 3 hours a week, cardio should be an hour and a half maximum. Ideally, I would say in a fat loss phase, the main form of cardio is going to be walking, right? And a lot of people don't realize, okay, walking, right? Um, Getting at least 7,500 steps a day is correlated with a significant drop in mortality, an increase in ability to lose fat, and a ton of other health benefits. And it's a lot easier than running for most people and more
Yep.
enjoyable.
Yep.
It's easy to fit into your day, like pacing around the house and parking farther from the store, going up the stairs, just going for a walk for 10 minutes after a meal. And that'll be the primary form. But if you want to do other more intense forms of cardio, you come from the CrossFit world or something. The next best thing would be high intensity interval training, maybe 2 or at most 3 times a week for about 10 to 20 minutes. And that would be the traditional um, 1-to-2 ratio of all out to rest. So for example, if you're going to do a 10-minute session of sprinting, you might sprint for 30 seconds and rest for a minute to a minute and a half, and then do that 6 times and you're done. Once or, maybe once or twice a week.
So if somebody's like, "Oh, but I just love running and
Mhm.
I love hit so much." Is is it bad to do more? Like what happens if we're doing more? If we're still doing what you say and we're going to go,
Yep.
"Okay, I'm going to commit to 3 times a week, 45 minutes of lifting, but now I want to do cardio every day. I want to go for a run for 30 minutes." Is
Mhm.
there a detriment to that or what starts to happen? Does it take away from the bodybuilding in any way?
The answer is yes to an extent. So
Mm.
there's something called the interference effect, which like many of these things evolve over time. It used to be this scary thing. Like if you do any cardio at all, you're going to interfere with your gains, and cardio is going to kill you or something. But it's a little more moderated than that. If you do a lot of cardio, especially running, you're going to interfere with your lifting in a few ways. Number one is recovery. So a lot of running is you're basically marshaling resources to recover from that stress that now cannot be devoted to recovering from the stress you put on your muscles so that they adapt, get stronger and bigger. Another way that interferes with recovery is physically with the joint impacts from running, on your knees, for example. And also the fact that when you run, there's both concentric and eccentric motion involved. Just like when you do squats, you go up and down. And that causes soreness, and that also causes recovery to, again, require resources for recovery from the running more than does for the lifting. And then the last thing that could be a problem is if you run too much, you send your body an endurance signal that's sort of in conflict with the strength building signal, meaning your body is saying, hey, I'm an endurance athlete, for lack of a better word, and I need to be efficient with my calories. So this downregulates your metabolism. So it actually has the opposite effect of what we want. A lot of people do cardio and running to burn calories, but too much of it will actually cause your metabolism to decline.
Awesome. I love that. See, that's stuff I did not know. And
Mhm.
on a hormonal standpoint, I will just add running is far more of a stressor
Mhm.
than weightlifting is. And women in midlife have a lot of issues with cortisol. Naturally, this happens where our cortisol will typically rise when we're going through perimenopause. So when we think about it from that stress bucket view, and we're adding, we've got all these stressors happening in our life, and then we're adding on top of that excessive amounts of cardio, then it's going to overfill that bucket. And then that stress becomes too much for the body. And when that happens, you can actually develop sarcopenia. So you can start eating away at those muscles that you're trying
Yes.
to build. Yeah. Okay. So here's the $1 million question. When I was on this journey, I started at the 3 times a week. So I think that, for anyone that's listening that hasn't started out doing any weightlifting, I think that is super ideal. And it's such a great, easy place to start that can be easily committed to. Like, I think most people can say, okay, 3 times a week is doable. I really wanted to take it up a notch. And so I wanted to do 5 days a week, 4 to
Mhm.
5 days a week of lifting. What I have noticed is I more so 4 than 5, but when I started, I was like, I want to do it 5 days a week because I want to put even more muscle on. Is that a problem?
So, building strength and size requires a certain amount of intensity, which means weight on the bar, and a certain amount of volume. And oddly enough, women can tend to handle a little bit more volume than men. And that's why we sometimes have different rep schemes for women as they get stronger. But as a beginner, you have the capacity to recover very quickly. So if you go 3 days a week, you can put in the most effort and intensity in that workout and get the most adaptation over the next 48 hours than if you were to go 4 or 5 days a week and have less of that recovery. So you're actually, and for some people, especially as you get older, I mean, 60s, 70s, 2 days a week might be ideal, or
Mm,
every third day or something like that. So it's always that we want to do so much. We want so much volume. We think more is better.
yes.
Now, as you get stronger and as you get into that intermediate phase, which is usually around 6 months of really solid, intelligent lifting, then you're going to need more days a week simply because you need long rest periods and you're working with very high weights, and it's just going to take too long in the gym otherwise. So you need to spread it out. Also,
Oh.
you need more volume at that level because you're not increasing the weight every session. You might be increasing it every week or two instead.
Oh, so kind of 6 months or more in, then you can do more days with more intensity, but longer
Yes,
between sets.
but more rest periods. Yeah, we can get into that as
Yeah.
well. All those details. Yep.
Okay, awesome. So I'm not doing anything wrong because I didn't start that till I was well into it.
No, I've done personally, I've done 3, 4, 5, and 6 day splits. But when I first started, the 3 days was where you could just put in the most effort. I mean, if you're going 5 days, what are you doing on those days? So, for example, if you're going to squat, are you squatting every day or are you splitting it up? There's a case to be made for splitting it and then just having much shorter sessions if it's a time thing, right? But systemically, like squats and deadlifts, they're systemically fatiguing. So you'd rather have that rest in between to get the most adaptation.
Right. Yeah. Cause that's what I did. I went to less body parts
Mhm.
per session. And I did do like 2 on, 1 off, 3 on, 1 off. Like
Mhm.
I did split it up because, and I felt like that was needed. And I can really listen to my body now and I'll be like, ooh, I really feel like I can't work out today. I need to
Yep.
rest. I'll be super sore from that workout that I did. So,
Right.
okay, I love this. I get really excited. So just rewind a little bit and just
Sure.
share a little bit about what the compounded movements are. Why is it called compounded? Because I'm trying to like, for the people that really have no clue, because
Right.
that's a big part of it too, Philip, is that women
Yeah.
are super afraid because they're like, what is this jargon? Like what's compounded exercise? What do they mean? Like, my little nephew the other day, he's 16 and he's been lifting weights and he's super into it. And I said, where were you at the gym today? And he was like, oh, I was there, I was there an hour later than you. And I was like, oh, well, I could have used you today because I got, I needed help with I said, I went up in my shoulder press and I needed help. And he's
You
like, oh
needed a
yeah,
spotter.
he said, oh yeah, you had a new PR, did you? I was like,
Yeah.
PR? What's PR? He's like, personal record.
There you go.
Like, this is my 16-year-old nephew. He's like,
It's true.
I'm like, yeah, the new PR.
Yeah. It's
Like
true. There's a
jargon.
lot
Yeah.
of lingo.
Okay. So explain
Yeah, like
compounded
PRRM,
exercise.
so on. So yeah, so compound is just because we're using multiple joints. So compound meaning multiple. That's what it means. Okay, so it's a multi-jointed movement. So when you think of what you could do in the gym, you could do something like a squat, which uses multiple joints, hips and knees and ankles, right? But if you did a barbell curl or a dumbbell curl, it uses a single joint, your elbow. So you can kind of reverse engineer any move and say, is it compound by how many joints are we using? The benefit of compound lifts is they allow you to lift the heaviest weight using the most muscle mass and also the biggest muscle fibers in the least amount of time. So it's kind of the dream movement for getting the biggest bang for your buck with our time in the gym. So with beginners, a very efficient approach is going 3 days a week and doing full body every single day, where you're squatting every day, deadlifting every day, and pressing every day, because you can handle that. And you don't need to be doing hip thrusts, ladies. You don't need to be doing kickbacks. You don't need to be doing any of this isolation stuff, cable work, machines, nothing. Because a little bit of humor here. If I have a male client come in and say, hey, I want to get big and strong, I said, all right, we need to get you just strong all around first. So we build that base. We're going to squat and deadlift. And if a female client says, I want to get tone, I want to get bigger butt, tighter butt, better legs. Okay, we got to squat and deadlift. It's the same answer, because that's how you use the most muscle mass and get significantly stronger in a very short period. I'm talking 3 months. You could probably go from a 5'7" female weighing, I don't know, 160, 170, could probably go from 95 pounds on the bar to over 200 in that time frame, for sets of 5. And the compound lifts are the way to do that. They're safe. You can use barbells, and they teach you how to work hard and work toward muscular failure.
Yeah. And it's I think an inexpensive way to get started at home if you wanted to, right? Like you could easily get some heavier dumbbells where, you could just do squats, chest press, deadlift, and shoulder press are all the compounded ones,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Okay.
Well,
Awesome.
there are other movements that are compound movements.
Yeah.
Technically, all the variants of those would be compound movements, and also things like a hip hinge, like a Romanian deadlift, or
Yeah.
a vertical pull, like a pull up or chin up, is also compound, right? A bent over row is a compound. So there are a lot of things that are compound movements, and I would always start there before I started adding in accessory movements and isolation movements.
Right. What is do the isolation movements though eventually have a place and can help to kind of get that more shredded look in the arms, for instance? Like, let's say, so some single ones, everybody would be, tricep work, bicep work,
Mm-hmm.
hamstring work, calves, right?
Yeah, I think of it as like layers. So if you
Okay.
want to, or a pyramid, you take the compound lifts will give you the big foundation at the bottom. They'll make you strong overall. They'll use multiple muscle groups every time you work them out. They'll keep things reasonably proportional to your own anatomy and your anthropometry, meaning like if you do a squat out on the grass, you're going to move in a certain way. If you lift a barbell doing that same movement, you're going to keep everything proportional, right? That's the first layer. The next layer would be things that support those movements. So it might be, for example, a close grip bench press to support your triceps in the bench press. So again, now you're starting to target the tricep a little bit more because the movement you're doing emphasizes that, but it's still using multiple muscle groups. Or another example would be like chin ups. I would tell people work chin ups before they start doing curls because that'll involve your back and your biceps.
Right.
And that's the second layer. And then the third layer is, okay, now I've got extra time. I'm an intermediate lifter. I want to improve my physique. I have the extra day in the gym. Let's throw in curls. So that's kind of the approach I take.
Oh, I like that. A layered, a stack,
Layered.
we'll call
Yes.
it. Yeah.
A
So you
stack.
a stack.
Get stacked and get jacked.
Nice.
Right.
Oh, I like that. I'm gonna put that as a little tagline in our for this interview.
Right.
Hey, you said, 3 months you can get results.
Mhm.
However, I don't think many people do because they're not pushing themselves hard enough. So, when it comes to how often should we be adding weight to that barbell, for instance, like if I can push out 10 and I'm struggling at 10, is that a sign that I need to put more on? Like how many reps should we be able to get to before failure in order to see results in 3 months and get some muscle built?
Right. So this is a debated topic because
Hmm.
it does depend on whether you're going to use barbells, dumbbells, or what have you. And it would be my preference for someone who's new to use barbells, but I know that we don't always have access to those or a gym with barbells, or we can't do that at our home gym. So then I would say dumbbells are the next best option. The challenge with dumbbells is going to be they get unwieldy as they get heavier, right? Like to get them into place for certain movements, like
Oh,
a bench press,
very much so.
yeah, you risk, pulling your shoulder, your elbow, and things like that. Whereas a barbell, you just unrack it. The other thing is it's hard to jump in weight the amount you want with a dumbbell because you need all the dumbbells, first of all. And if you are not super strong yet, you don't want to make necessarily 5 pound jumps when you need to make a 2.5 pound jump. Right.
Hmm.
And so then you have to like look at getting a micro plate or magnets or something like that. These are like little hacks. But let's just simplify it and talk about barbells. The first workout you ever do, you're gonna pick a weight that you think is reasonable, whatever that is. I don't care. It might be too light for you that day. And our goal is to do a fixed set of reps and sets. So we're not working in rep ranges as a beginner. Like we're not working 8 to 12 or 6 to 8. We're saying, all right, we're going to do 3 sets of 5 squats Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the indefinite future. That first day you come in, you put 95 pounds on the bar and you 3 sets of 5. Yeah, that was no problem. Okay, great. So the next time you're going to put 5, maybe 10 pounds more. If I see that it's easy for you, we go up by 10, which is roughly 10%. So you're up to 105, no problem. Then you're up to 115. Okay, now it's starting to get hard. All right, maybe we start making 5 pound jumps here. After maybe a month of that, now you're pushing upper 100s. And this is really hard. I don't think I could get all 3 sets. No, you can get all 3 sets because that's what we're doing. We're getting all 3 sets of 5 squats, like you've been doing every session. But next week we're going to go up by 2.5. So it kind of logarithmically scales, right? You kind of go up 10%, then maybe 5%, then maybe 2.5. But the goal is to never miss a rep. And you go in thinking, I'm never going to miss a rep. It's a mindset thing. You're not going to miss a rep. And if you understand the reasons we fail reps, you'll do the things ahead of time to not miss a rep. Okay. So it's not really about feel. It's not about, is this feeling hard? It's, you are getting the 3 sets of 5. And because you got it, you're going to get a little stronger over the next 48 hours. Your body's going to adapt and you're going to be able to get 5 pounds more next time because you got stronger. Same thing over and over, repeated again and again until you start plateauing months down the line. Now, what are the 3 things that can cause us to fail reps? Number 1, you're not taking long enough rest periods. So we talked about that earlier. A lot of people think 30 seconds is enough. I don't know what your experience is, Karen, but 30 seconds to a minute. Let's just go to the next set. I just want to get this done. I would say you need at least 2 to 3 minutes. And after about a month or 2 of strength gains, probably 3 to 5 minutes between those compound lifts, because you want to get all the reps. I don't want you to sweat or get sore. That's not the point. Or just to get it done. It's to get all the reps. So that's number 1, rest. Number 2 is recovery between workouts. So this goes back to, don't do a crazy amount of cardio, eat enough food, get enough sleep, manage your stress. Now, it is pretty much a fact that most people cannot build much muscle unless you are at least at maintenance calories or in a surplus. But if you're very overweight or if you're brand new, I definitely have seen people gain muscle even in a diet. So that gets into the nuances of which direction do we go. If a client's coming to me and is 30 pounds overweight, has struggled with weight for years, and she just wants to feel better by getting that quick win, I'm not going to force her to start gaining weight, to build muscle necessarily. On my mind, I'm like, that might be the ideal thing to do. You're not going to like gaining another 10 pounds before we lose 30 pounds.
Yes, that's tough. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that mindset. So rest between sets, recovery between workouts. And then the last thing is not making jumps that are too big. So if you have all those in your mind, if you listen to your body and you start jumping week to week, or session to session, taking the right rest and having the right recovery, you should be able to string that out for 3 to 6 months and get significantly stronger.
Okay, so let me get this right. So when we want to, let's say we need to get to 5, we're doing 5 reps. How many times are we doing that?
3 sets of 5.
3 sets of 5.
Yep.
For a squat. And it's not about like, was that too easy? It's more about making sure you're adding weight to that on a weekly basis.
No, on a session by session basis.
Oh, ouch. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, that's progressive overload, right? Let's just throw the phrase out there in case people aren't familiar. That's what we mean by progressive overload. It's kind of a misnomer because you're not really overloading beyond what you can handle. You're loading just to the limit of what you can handle in that session. And then your body adapts to that because you said, hey, I need to handle heavy weight, body. And your body says, okay, let's grab the protein, let's break it into amino acids and build muscle tissue, make you a little bit stronger. And then 2 days later, you come back, oh, now I can lift 5 more pounds.
And just to be clear, in case I talk to my nephew again, would that be PO, progressive overload? Is there an acronym for that?
No, there's not. No.
Okay.
No.
So I shouldn't be like, hey, did you PO today?
No, not at all. You never know though, right?
Okay. Well, I just want to get this right, the slang right, so I can be cool to my young nephews. Okay. I don't do that. Oh my gosh. Okay. That's very cool. And I'm really excited about it. So each day of the week, we're going up in weights.
Yeah. So if we're squatting, it's going to be every time. If we're deadlifting, we're probably not going to do 3 sets because it's so fatiguing on the body that you might do 1 set. And after a few weeks or maybe a month, you might alternate deadlifts with another pull, like pull-ups, because it's just so fatiguing. This is where we have to balance recovery and stress.
Right. And I guess when you're working with, this is where you can come in too, like where it's so valuable to work with a trainer because like I wasn't doing this on my own, and to have somebody there that's going to say, okay, that looked like, it was really, you were really struggling. So we're going to now pair this with, a chin up or whatever, to watch what we're doing and to tweak it however necessary at that time. I think that's definitely takes a trainer when you're starting out to help you with that. But that's so cool. Okay, so we're going up every session, and if need be, you're waiting 3 to 5 minutes between sets.
Right.
If it was
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ideally,
Yeah. Yeah.
probably.
Ideally, it's as long as you need to get all the reps.
Right. And if
Okay.
you don't, let's say you're doing that squat and you can only do 3,
Then you
and we're
failed.
just
No, I'm
then
just kidding.
you're out.
And that's where it's like we have to play the mind game and the
Okay.
thought experiment and say, okay, our goal is never to miss reps. We
Right.
don't go in and getting 3. So what do we need to do ahead of time to get to be successful next time in the gym? And it might be, well, we only go up by 2.5 pounds this time. Or it might be, hey, we need to get more sleep because we're only getting 6.5 hours. We need to get 7 or 7.5 or 8. Little things like that before we start saying, I'm just not getting stronger. I'm plateauing. Right.
Yeah.
And you see the same thing when it comes to dieting and other things. Like we look at biofeedback and we try to get the whole system in balance before we make drastic moves and say, okay, you've got a medical condition or you've got something else going on. I do want to address, Karen, the other thing
Yeah.
is, so a lot of my clients don't necessarily use barbells because they don't have access to them. And they don't necessarily have to do sets of 5, right? So you were saying you don't do that. You do probably rep ranges. Maybe you work 8 to 10 reps
Yes.
on
Yeah.
a dumbbell movement. So for dumbbells, that actually makes more sense because you don't want to go extremely heavy with dumbbells, just
Yeah. I
too
can't.
unwieldy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's okay. And as long as the goal is to get close to muscular failure, right? So if you're doing a compound movement, that's usually 2 to 3 reps shy of failure. A beginner doesn't really know where that is, though. Let's be honest. They really don't know because a beginner doesn't know their maximum strength. They can't express that yet. They don't have the training. They don't have the experience. They don't even have the form. So in that case, if your rep range is 8 to 12, I would say your first set should definitely be no more than 12, right? And if you get to 12 and you're like, I can keep going, but know that that was too light.
Right.
So your first set should be no more than 12 and your last set should be no less than 8, right? And if every set is around 11 or 12, then you're going to increase the weight next week. You're going to increase, or the next time, you're going to keep doing it just like we do with the barbells until one of those sets can't get to 8. So if one of those sets comes out at 7 and that's absolutely the last one you can do, that is where you do a reset. That is where you say, I'm now going to go back down to a weight that's a little bit more for 12 than I did before.
Just because we're limited with dumbbells.
Well, this is more of the this is called double progression, where if we're working in a rep range, I don't want you to try to hit 10 exactly. I'd rather you push with the dumbbells, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be in a range. That's why we have the range. But my point is, if you're going to increase the weight each session. If you then have a session where one of those sets is 7 and you can't get 8, then you've hit your limit. And the next week you're going to reduce the weight on the dumbbells, but it's going to be higher than the last time you got 12. You know what I mean? So if you started at 15, 20, 25, 30, and now you hit your limit, and last time you did 15 pounds for 12, we'll now go for 20 for 12.
Right.
Or 17 and a half for 12 if you have microplates.
Yeah, great. Those are little nuances. Yep. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I was doing everything from home, and I have a barbell, I got a rack, I got dumbbells, but I did 100% get to a point where I became limited with what I was using, especially with the dumbbells. Like I as a woman, I used to do massage therapy, so I don't have strong hands. Just to pick up the dumbbell that I needed to do a chest press with I couldn't do it. And same with even just, bent over rows. I was like, I can't, this is too light for me. And so I had to go to the gym where I could get access to people helping me and spotting me and being able to do the barbell with help, and instead of doing dumbbells. And so I did have to go to the gym eventually if I wanted to continue building the muscle. And it definitely helped me to jump up. And so I think those that are listening, I think, you can get limited from home.
Right.
Wouldn't you
It's
think? Yeah.
yeah, it's about maximizing versus progress is progress. So I agree doing any form of strength training is going to get you stronger and build muscle, but it just may take a lot longer than you'd like unless you're pushing it with the right tools. And in this
Hmm.
case, that would be barbells, for example. Or it could be certain cable machines and things like that where you can load them heavy, but barbells are the safest way to go.
Yeah. I feel like with this was like I feel like I just got like a secret for everybody because I just how to do this. I think this is so awesome because most women that you speak to will tell you that they were doing what I was doing, which is
Hmm.
12 reps, 3 sets of 12.
Hmm.
And, they're making sure that they get so that it's a little bit tough, but they're never going beyond that, 10-pound, 15-pound dumbbell. It's just like we have this block or
Hmm.
something. I
Hmm.
think a lot of us do. And it's you get into routine, really. And
Yeah.
so knowing that you should be putting an emphasis on putting weight on maybe every session. Like you said, there's nuances to that, but that this weight is always increasing. I think that
Yes.
that is so key because most people don't get results within 3 months and then they give up because they're like,
Hmm.
I'm not seeing any difference. I'm not losing weight. I'm done. This is, and they can't stick to it. So knowing that, oh, this is a different way to make sure that we're progressively building muscle and that we could see results in as little as 3 months. And I know you're not saying like we're going to be bikini models in 3 months or
Hmm.
anything,
Hmm.
but just knowing that as a goal to keep in mind, like, because when you get started working out, it can be really hard to stick
Yes.
with it and build up this new habit. So knowing like, okay, but in 3 months, I could start seeing results. I feel like that's really encouraging for the people that are just starting out.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I did CrossFit for 8 years. And anybody listening, about CrossFit, there's a lot of barbell work, right? There's Olympic lifts and there's deadlifts and all that, but it doesn't use this progressive overload. So you kind of tap out pretty quickly. You get a little stronger just naturally, but your weight kind of plateaus for years. And then it wasn't until I said, okay, I need to do it this other way that I realized within months, I took my squat from like, what was it? 215 to 315 in a few months. It's a huge jump for a male to do that. Of course, I haven't taken it much more than that since then because you start to plateau, but I'm happy where I got.
Okay, so the next $1 million question, protein. How much protein do we need to be doing this style of muscle growth where we're really putting an emphasis on putting more weight on and
Mhm.
we're not wanting to bulk, but we need to feed the muscle. And if we're in this extreme caloric deficit, you just can't get enough protein in. So how do we balance this? How can we keep losing weight, get enough protein in, and put muscle on?
Yeah, protein is like the anchor macronutrient. It's the one that we peg the rest of our nutrition to. It's the one that we pick first and we target first. And whether you're gaining weight or losing weight, the protein needs are about the same. So on a diet, it makes it harder because now you're sacrificing fats and carbs. When you're building, it's usually not as difficult. So the amount of protein we need, the quick rule of thumb is 1 gram per pound.
Okay.
So that's whatever you weigh, take a gram per pound. The more nuanced answer is there's a range between zero point 0.7 and 1 that's considered optimal for most people, maybe even a little more when you're losing weight. And it's based on your target weight. So if you're very overweight, let's say you're 250 and your goal weight is 190, I'm going to have you pretend that you're 190 pounds and base your protein off of that. So what I find is, especially for women, they tend to be under eating protein by roughly half. That's usually what I see.
Yeah.
So 160-pound female should be eating at least around 140. You don't have to get all the way to the 1 gram. And she's usually eating around 60 to 80.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what happens when you don't eat a lot of meat, but you eat some meat and you usually don't have much protein with breakfast and you're not having a lot of snacks. Or if you're like intermittent fast, something like that, you just can't cram in all that protein unless you intentionally do it. So every single client I have struggles with this when they come in.
Mm-hmm.
And every single client I have, this is one of our primary priorities from week one is getting that protein where it needs to be. And we talk about things like meal planning for that. So if you need to get, I mean, Karen, if you need 160 grams of protein, you don't want to cram those into 2 meals, right? That's 80 grams of protein. So by definition, do the math, you need to eat 4 or 5 times a day. But 1 or 2 of those might just be a protein shake or a small snack with dairy if you eat dairy, you know, like cottage cheese or Greek yogurt or something like that. And it's just simple math. And once you do that, you've satisfied your protein requirements, no matter what your goal is. You get your enough protein for the day and you spread it out evenly, you're good.
Is there an amount that we shouldn't go over per meal as far
No.
as protein goes?
There's no limit to protein per meal per day. Absolutely not. There used to be some concern about kidneys and whatnot. All of that is a myth.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
And something that one of my trainers told me, she said, because I said, I have a trouble getting in that much protein because I'm not hungry. So I'll prioritize protein and then find that by the end of the day, I still haven't eaten enough, but I'm not hungry. So it's hard. It was really hard for me. And she said, as you start lifting more, then your hunger will go up. And so then the need for protein will increase. But so is that, if we're listening to our body, we're not trying to overfeed ourselves, correct?
Right. The protein has to be within our calorie needs, depending on what our deficit requirement or our surplus requirement is. Yep.
Okay. And so I would think, especially doing this kind of style of workout that you're talking about, I could really see then that, yes, hunger would start to increase. And so the first and foremost thing to be eating is the protein, because that's your body's telling you need more protein because you're hungry.
Yeah, that's a good point. And protein has a lot of benefits that are associated with that. One is protein is the most satiating macronutrient. So it will fill you up the most, which would explain why somebody trying to eat a lot would get fuller more easily. But it's a good thing when you're dieting. It helps. The second thing is it has the highest thermic effect of feeding. So it burns the most calories when being digested compared to the other macros. So just eating more protein burns more calories. And then what was the third thing? I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's good enough for now.
Yeah. And so with your clients and what you're seeing, even just with your own experience and what's out there, how do we lose weight? Is it that we're just putting on muscle? We don't really have to pay attention as much. As long as we're eating healthy, we're getting our protein requirement. Do we need to be in still a caloric deficit to lose the fat part?
Yeah. What is our goal, Karen? So this is where we can pick a scenario. Is this someone who feels that they're 20 or 30 pounds overweight and they're trying to lose weight?
Yep.
And so if it were a male client and I said, let's build muscle first, they'll listen to me and they'll just do it. A female client.
And they'll lose 20 pounds in a week without even trying. So let's just be honest here. Women are different.
It's totally the opposite. I mean, some men, I struggle to have them gain weight. But for women, what we would do first is before we do any fat loss, we're going to get you into a maintenance phase and discover your true maintenance calories and get some of these skills in place. So the most important skills for me are going to be enough protein, training, and steps. Okay. There are other things like sleep and stress that are also important, but it depends on the individual. You may have those handled, but if it's a big red flag, that might pop to the top of the list. So once those are in place and you're at maintenance for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks usually, and we see what your typical calorie burn is, then we know what the deficit is required to lose weight. So you have to be in a deficit to lose weight, period. That's just energy balance. You know this. I know it's a rhetorical question, but
but it's good.
Yeah.
I think it's good to remind people.
Good to remind people. So then let's say you burn 2,000 calories a day. That's your metabolism. And you want to lose weight. You want to lose about 20 or 30 pounds. You're going to want to lose it at a reasonable rate of 1/4 to 1% of your weight per week. So if, let's just for numbers, say you're starting at 200 pounds. So you could go up to 2 pounds a week. That's going to be tough in terms of the calorie deficit. So in the middle, let's say a pound a week. So a pound a week is about 3,500 calories a week. Divided by 7, it's 500 calories a day. So your deficit is going to be 500 calories. So if your metabolism is 2,000, you need to be eating 1,500. And I'm sure a lot of women listening are familiar with numbers like 1600, 1200 calorie diets, even the very
Yes.
restrictive 800, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So 1500, I think is reasonable, if not slightly aggressive, but most people have done that. You take that number and you start with protein. Now you say, okay, I'm 200 pounds and I want to get down to 170. I need about 170 grams of protein. So whatever calories that is, multiply it by 4, you get your calories. Then you go with fat. So fat is typically around 25, 30% of your calories. Now, if you come from keto, you're probably used to it being like 50 or 60%. But guess what happens if you do that? Now you crowd out your carbs completely, which is going to be detrimental when we're trying to retain muscle or even build muscle. So that's going to discussion about carbs.
Yeah.
We need carbs for recovery, and we need it for glycogen when we work out. That's the main purpose. Even though our body, it's not essential, right? Carbs are not essential. You learn this with keto, that you don't have to ingest any carbs and you can survive. But when we're trying to build muscle, retain muscle, we need them. So
Yeah.
if you've
And
got
it doesn't, sorry to interrupt, but I just heard this great saying where this guy was like, yeah, carbs aren't essential. However, that doesn't mean that they're not necessary.
Right.
It just means that you could survive without them. It
Right.
doesn't mean there's not purpose to them.
Right. They're not optimal and so on. Yeah. So if you're on 1600 calories and you have 170 grams of protein, and then whatever the fat comes out to be, you're probably going to be in the 100s for carbs, which is not really, it's not keto, and it's not even low carb in some people's minds, right? It's going to be enough to give you the energy you need. So that's the formula. What a lot of people do when they diet, though, is they don't eat enough protein. And so now they're trying to make up for it with fats or carbs, or they're just under eating in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they're eating, and then they're eating too many carbs, just trying to meet that protein threshold that their body wants. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then once again, everybody, there's nuances to that. So don't take it as it's written in stone. I always like to say we're all individual.
Yes.
Because if somebody's not lifting, then they should probably be still prioritizing protein 100%. But they probably shouldn't be eating as many carbs in my world. Like, I'm not one for like, let's go below 50 every single day and be in that keto. I think that's super detrimental.
Yeah, I agree.
There's some nuances there.
If you're sedentary, a lot of these rules change, but it also, if you're talking truly sedentary and not doing any resistance training, it's going to be hard to avoid losing muscle if you're in a diet as well. Honestly, every one of my clients, I've got to have them train. Like, I've even thought of having that as a prerequisite to getting clients, because I think it's so important that you do that.
Yeah, I know. I wish I could as well. With my membership group, like I do these weekly meal plans inside my membership group, and there's always at least 150 members in there. And it's so hard for me to decide what the macros are going to be each day, because there's such a wide variety. I have some women that are coming in that haven't exercised for years and they're sedentary. And then it's like, ooh, or they're, insulin resistant, they're type 2 diabetic. We have these problems, but then you have the next woman who's working out 5 days a week, who's putting on muscle, and she's like, 1,500 calories. That's not enough, Karen. I need to eat more than that. I work out a lot. And then I'll have some people come in and be like, oh, you've got more than 50 grams of carbs in this diet. I can't do that. I've been keto for 2 years. I'll put on 5 pounds overnight if I eat like that. So it's like, oh, it's so frustrating for me, because I want to be able to have each person create their own, but
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's
so it's always challenging.
Level.
Yeah. So I think it's just important for everybody to know you have to make it your own, and listen to this formula that Philip's talking about and apply that to yourself. And then you may just, if you're getting a meal plan from somewhere, whether it's from me or somewhere else, that you adjust it to meet those needs for you. That's super key. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think meal planning is a good skill to develop on your own as well, because it helps you avoid decision-making in the moment. It actually helps with emotional eating, helps with overeating, in that you can, like, if today is Tuesday, tomorrow's Wednesday, go ahead and plan out your day and make it fit these numbers and see what it takes to do that. You might find it's very difficult, and that's why you're struggling every day to hit it in the moment, because you can't even do it on paper ahead of time, of course it's going to be impossible to do in the moment. So let's play the game of Tetris and let's figure out how to move things around, or go with a low fat version of dairy instead of a full fat, or, add some more meat here and take something out here and so on. Yeah, I think that's a good skill.
That's great. Great, great, great. Okay, so mindset, last couple questions here. You know, that's probably everybody's biggest failure as far as working out goes, is they have that their mindset hasn't changed. So then they get into these programs and, a month in, they fall off the old wagon. And next thing you know, they haven't worked out. And I did this, everybody. I did this, like, I feel like my entire life, the start, stop when it came to working out, because of so many different things. It would just be like, oh yeah, I'm tired today, I don't want to work out. So how can you give us some pointers for those women that find it tough to stick to? What would you say to somebody that has a hard time sticking to working out?
Hmm. So this is where, of course, of course, you're gonna have to ask the why, right? Because the reason is gonna be different. But this is where I
Mhm.
think controlling your environment and maybe a concept like habit stacking could be helpful. Just a couple things that come to mind. So controlling your environment, meaning if your reason you're not going to the gym is because it's early in the morning, you get out of bed, you're like, oh, now I have to get my gym clothes and my protein powder and this and that, and it's cold outside, and then I have to jump and forget it, snooze. Well, maybe you take the day before you work out where you're fresh and, excited. You put your gym bag together, you grab your blender bottle, you get everything set up, put it near the door. And then the next day when you wake up, you're like, that'd be way too much work to undo everything I just did. Let me just go to the gym. It's kind of controlling your environment, right? To reduce friction. Another thought is habit stacking. It's a cool concept. I think that came from Atomic Habits, the book Atomic Habits, where you pick a thing that you really enjoy and couple it with the thing that you don't enjoy as much, and only allow yourself to do the thing you don't enjoy, or the thing you enjoy with that. So that could be like, I'm going to watch streaming while I get my steps on the treadmill, and I'm
Oh,
not going to allow myself
yes.
to watch unless I go on the treadmill.
That's
Little things
awesome.
like that. I can't think of other examples. Top of
I'll give you my,
my
because
head.
that was one of my biggest blocks. Was I had so much work to do,
Mm. Mhm.
and I just was like, I was so addicted to working that it was so hard for me to pull away and have this block of time to go work out, because I'd be like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do today. I don't have time for working out. And so I decided that that's an excuse. And so I'm like, I didn't know it was called habit stack. I'm going to habit stack. I didn't say those words, but, and I started in between my sets, because I was lifting pretty heavy. I always took a couple of minutes in between
Yep.
sets. Is I started doing, I would put an agreement with myself. I would say to myself, you can check your email while you work out and
Mhm.
respond. And so in between sets, I would reply to all of my emails that I had to do. So that took away, because that's usually the first thing I do when I get to work every day, is check emails and respond to
Yeah.
them. So that I just put them together and it worked out beautifully. And now I don't have a problem. Or I'll listen to a podcast
Yes.
that is teaching me something, so that
Yeah.
I have this, because I think I have a little ADD or something, because I need like that constant stimulate. So if I'm educating my
Uh-huh.
brain as I'm working my body, oh, that's just like the dream
It
team
just
right there.
absorbs it like a
Yeah,
sponge.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally, totally. I
That's a
love
great
it.
idea.
Yeah,
Both
because
of
then
those
my
are great
mind's
ideas.
going,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
takes care of that. So I don't feel unsettled there, as well as my body's working out. So it really helped with that, because, and it helps with people, I think, too, that find working out boring.
Yes, yes. And that's the other thing, is the boring working out part. It's like, again, why are you bored? Because if it's a lack of variety, there's a solution for that. But if it's just like you said, just you just always find it boring, maybe you stack it with checking your email.
Yes.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So tell us now what it looks like to work with you. What does that look? Are we doing weekly check-ins? I mean, are
Mhm.
you working with only people in person? How does it work virtually?
Yep.
Tell us.
Yeah, no, it's online only, so I can work with anyone around the world in the modern day. And basically, we work on getting you through an initial phase where we prepare your metabolism for fat loss. So most of my clients that come in, they want to lose weight, they want to lose fat. So we want to spend that time up front with a lot of these skills we just talked about, protein, steps, and so on. And there's a whole bunch of other little things that I can work with, and tools and resources and guides. And the value of having a coach, and Karen understands this, and her listeners, is the accountability and that extrinsic motivation, because we all want to do this and know we have to do it, but we don't always do it. So having somebody to push you day after day, give you some tough love, whatever communication style works for you, can be super helpful in keeping you on path till those things become habits. So you may know you have to get a lot of protein, but you continue to struggle doing it. Somebody there is looking over your shoulder and looking at your numbers and having you track, you're probably going to do it. And if you don't do it, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to understand why. We're going to say what roadblocks to remove, all the things you just talked about, so that you are successful.
And Philip's going to ground you, and you're going to be in big trouble.
No, whatever your communication style is, it's all good. I try to be empathetic best I can. And so we go through that phase, and that might be as short as 2 weeks. It might be as long as 4 to 6 weeks. And I don't want to say you necessarily earn your fat loss, but effectively, I don't want you to start losing weight until those other things are in place, because then it'll be successful. Training, all those other things. So you get the benefit of also working with me, that I tend to understand training and can give you recommendations and do form checks and all that. Then we do the fat loss phase, and that can take whatever it takes for your particular situation. The entire time we're focused on not restricting and not cutting out food groups and not taking away the things you enjoy, but incorporating those at the right level of restraint, and learning skills to manage things like going out on the weekends and social events and so on. Once we're done with that, you hit your target and you're super happy. Now we're like, what's next? Well, do we maintain our weight? Do we start building muscle? And you might now be inclined to actually gain weight and build muscle, because you know you can control your environment, you can control your health. And that's kind of the long and short of it, Karen.
Oh, I love it. I think it's so important. And I think everybody listening needs to ask themselves, what has been your history with working out? Like, when I was honest with myself and I could see that I was a yo-yo exerciser, that I would, I've always had the eating down. It's always come very easily to me. I eat really well. But the working out did not come easy to me. And it was like I kept waiting for it to come easy. I kept waiting for the energy to want to go work out, and the desire to be like, yes, it looks like so much fun. I want to go work out and do this every day. And it never did. In 40 years, I never got those feelings. And so I had to be very honest with myself. And I want everybody to be honest with themselves and ask know yourself. If what you've been doing hasn't worked up until now, then you need to do something different. And that accountability and having somebody watch over your shoulder, as Philip said, is priceless in my eyes. It really, truly is. It's what got me into it for the first time in my life, was simply by having a trainer looking at my food, looking at my workouts, and checking in with me on a weekly basis. It was amazing.
Yeah. And I like to say that if you can fire me in, say, 6 months and be successful for the rest of your life, and I did my job, I don't care that I'm losing a client, because
that's awesome.
Tell everyone else, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's like what our goal is. I want you to fire me in 6 months. There we go. Right. Like, that's awesome.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to have you back. I would love to do a Q&A style with you, Philip,
that would be fun. Yeah.
From the listeners. Everybody can send in their questions, and we can set it up for those that are working out or just getting started. And in the meantime, though, you guys, you got to check out Philip's podcast, Wits and Weights. I've been listening to it. It's great. He's got great information on there. Plus, he's got a really good Facebook group that I'm part of. I also got Philip's free gift, which you guys can all go get, which is still the same? Because I did this months ago.
It is, yes.
And so tell us about what that is.
It's a 14-day protein power transformation program that'll just help you instill those habits of getting more protein.
Yes, which I think most of us ladies could really use.
Mhm.
So go check it out. It was great. I did it. And it definitely helped me to see how else I could be getting some more protein into my diet. So thank you so much, Philip. I am really excited about this new friendship.
Me too. Ecstatic. This is great. I loved it.
Yes, it was so good. All right. I'm going to have you back again, but thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Karen. It's great to be here.